Public Library, we'd like to welcome you to our annual Juneteenth celebration. My name is Sharon Russell Fowler. I'm one of the trustees from the library. We also have several other trustees that are standing in the back. Would they raise their hand and just wave, please? Thank you. We also have the mayor as well as the staff. The staff from the library would wave also. Thank you very much. So as a former teacher, I wanted to know a little bit more about Juneteenth, and I'm not going to take away from what's going to also be mentioned, but I tried to think of it as a personal person, just myself. And the first thing I thought of was the 2 years that went by that no one knew that they were free is 730 days. So just think about that for a moment, 730 days. During that time, I could have had 2 pregnancies, but the children wouldn't have been free. There could have been 2 planting seasons and 2 harvest seasons, and I wouldn't have been free. I could have missed 2 free marriages, and I could have also missed 2 that never knew that they died. So just some things to kind of think about when you think about Juneteenth, because it really is a day to really reflect, learn more about, do a little research, and hopefully you'll learn more this evening. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me back there? Yes. Loud and clear? Excellent. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Louis Polito with the Belmar Public Library, and welcome to tonight's 2025 Juneteenth celebration concert. Let us begin celebrating together as a community this new holiday of ours by please standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a great program for you tonight, featuring music by African American composers as performed by the great John Luckenbill Pops Orchestra we have here tonight. And we also have poetry done sent to us by New Jersey spoken word poetry artist Mr. James C. Ellerbe. Now, if you haven't already done so, before you leave today, please take a moment and stop by the Belmar Historical Society's display on the history of African Americans here in Belmar. It's a pretty cool display. Check it out, I assure you. And how was the food, everyone? Ever enjoyed the sandwich? I want to thank ShopRite of Belmar and 18th Avenue, and also the JUNETEENTH over at Sweet Teas on Main Street for the refreshments tonight. Please check them out when you get a chance. They're really good to work with. So let's get started. Behold, everyone, the official Juneteenth flag. Let's explore it together, shall we? The flag's imagery represents freedom and the end of slavery, but each part has its own essence and adds to the meaning of the flag. The star has a dual meaning, the first one being Texas, the Lone Star State, the state where the last slaves were told of their freedom. The second meaning goes further, meaning all 50 states where all African Americans are free and equal citizens. The burst around the star, inspired by a star-going supernova, represents the announcement of freedom as a new beginning for African Americans throughout the land. The curve across the width over there represents a new horizon with all the possibilities and promise in store for African Americans. And the red, white, and blue colors represents the American flag with a reminder that slaves and their descendants were and are Americans. And finally, the date, June 19th, 1865, Freedom Day, our nation's second Independence Day. This is the date that United States Army Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, to begin spreading the news of freedom to the last remaining slaves throughout the country. And begin he did. It wasn't enough to simply proclaim freedom for the slaves from a balcony and call it a day. Oh, no, 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 no. He and his troops had taken over a year to march across Texas to free all the slaves. Why? Because the slave owners had no interest in telling the slaves of their own freedom. forcing Granger and his troops to go town by town, plantation by plantation, in order to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation. Thus began the long journey for equal rights and freedoms for African Americans in American society. From the days of Jim Crow and segregation, the Civil Rights Movement, all the way through Black Lives Matter, and today, the march towards freedom and equality moved in fits and starts, with each step forward marking progress towards that more perfect union our founding fathers spoke of. Juneteenth is a call to continue that journey towards equality and freedom, a reminder of the fact that our nation, as we know it today, is a product of the labor of many hands, white hands, black hands, free hands, and slave hands, as the poet Langston Hughes once put it, and as such it is forever a work in progress. That labor of many hands over the years produced the cities that we know and live in today, the farms that feed us, the factories, roads, and railroads that supply us, the sports, music, and arts that entertain us, and the culture that enlivens us. They march together as one to win the progress and civil rights that we enjoy today. Juneteenth is a celebration of the result of that labor, but it is also a challenge to stand for justice for all, a challenge to stand against those who will take us back or hold us back, a challenge to overcome. Over the years, that challenge has been met in ways great and small by everyday Americans rising against the obstacles placed before them. And one of them, Walter McAfee, lived right here in the Belmar area. But his story begins in Texas. Susie and Luther McAfee were a young married black couple living in the small town of Ord, Texas in the early 20th century. They were both well educated, with Luther educated at Texas College and working as a carpenter. Susie studied at Wiley College, and although she qualified as an elementary school teacher, she never once held a teaching position in a school. You see, in 1912, Susie took the exam for the Texas teaching certification. She passed all the parts, but her spelling paper was mysteriously lost. When her father went to find out what the problem was, he was told, if you pay $50 or $1,650 today, more than 2 months' salary back then, her paper could be found. Outraged, he refused to pay, and as a result, Susie could not become a teacher. Despite this, Susie didn't let her training go to waste. With the loving support of her husband Luther, she successfully homeschooled all 9 of their children, with all 9 going on to earn college degrees, 7 in mathematics and 2 in chemistry. One of their sons, Walter, went on to graduate magna cum laude in mathematics from Wiley College in 1934. In 1935, he applied for and was instantly accepted at Ohio State University, and earning his master's in theoretical and mathematical physics in 1937. He was one of the very few African Americans earning advanced degrees at the time. When World War II broke out, he wanted to help the war effort, so he started applying for positions. He was rejected often, because at the time, applications asked for photographs to be included, and his black heritage held him back. Finally, he applied to work at the U.S. Army Signal Corps Electronics Research Command right here at Camp Evans, over here in Wall Township. And this time, no photos were required. Lo and behold, he got hired right away. By the time Walter and his wife Viola moved to South Belmar in 1942, he was already a recognized scientist and joined a growing group of African American scientists working for the U.S. government because the private sector wouldn't hire them. He started to work immediately on Project Diana, the effort to bounce radar signals off the moon. Walter did all the mathematical calculations necessary to ensure Project Diana succeeded. And succeed it did on January 10, 1946. That success paved the way for the development of technology that ultimately won the Cold War and space race for the United States. He went on to earn his doctorate in physics from Cornell University in 1949, then returned to South Belmar to continue working at Camp Evans until he retired in 1985. earning more accolades and recognition along the way. He also taught nuclear physics and solid-state electronics to students at Monmouth College. And it was for his life's work that the Belmar Post Office was named in his honor in 2019. Through Walter and her other children, Susie ultimately triumphed. That despite the corruption that tried to hold her back, she still made an impact that propelled America forward. Just think about this. If she did that with her 9 children, imagine the impact America could have benefited from had she taught the hundreds, if not thousands, of students that never sat in her classroom. Both she and Walter demonstrated deep patriotism and belief in the American creed of equality, freedom, and justice for all. That despite the obstacles they and many others faced, they still contributed to the labor of America, had a hand in making America what it is today. And that because the American creed includes everyone of all races, we all have a stake in the growth, success, and survival of America as the last best hope on earth. The African-American poet Langston Hughes summed this all up nicely in his poem, Freedom's Plow. Written in 1942, he told the story of America as a work of labor by the hands of many over the years, a project that, while incomplete at start, grew into the America of today and still grows as a work in progress. He told of how the words of Jefferson, Lincoln, and Douglas gave hope and faith to the slaves that one day they too will be free. And in the Titanic war against fascism, that was World War II, the poem finally encouraged Americans to stay strong, unite, and defend our American values, together as a nation of patriots. He closes with these 2 stanzas. America, land created in common, dream nourished in common. Keep your hand on the plow. Hold on. If the building is not yet finished, don't be discouraged, builder. If the fight is not yet won, don't be weary, soldier. The plan and the pattern is here, woven from the beginning into the warp and woof of America. All men are created equal. No man is good enough to govern another man without his consent. Better die free than to move slaves. Who said those things? Americans. Who owns these words? America. Who is America? You, me, we are America. To the enemy who will conquer us from without, we say no. To the enemy who will divide and conquer us from within, we say no. Freedom, brotherhood, democracy. To all the enemies of these great words, we say no. A long time ago, an enslaved people heading towards freedom made a song. Keep your hand on the plow and hold on. That plow plowed a new furrow across the field of history. Into that furrow, the freedom seed was dropped. And from that seed, a tree grew, is growing, and will ever grow. That tree is for everybody, for all America, and for all the world. May its branches spread and shelter grow, so that all races and all peoples know its shade. Keep your hand on the plow. Hold on. Happy JUNETEENTH. We are happy to present to you the John Luckenbill Orchestra.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this very important celebration. This is the John Luckenbill Pops Band. We usually play every Monday in July and August, but for the past 3 years, we've had a great time with it becoming a preseason concert, but I don't mean that it's not important. It's very important. But we've had 3 Juneteenth celebrations, and we're proud to be a part of it. And Louis, of course, gave you a great history. I was going to give you some, but he covered it pretty darn well. So we're going to try and put some great music along with the history. And of course, we invite you to come to our concerts. We're here every single Monday in July and August, starting at 7 o'clock. Now we're going to get off to a lively start. We all know Dixieland had its start way down in New Orleans, and we have a piece called the South Rampart Street Parade, which is kind of considered the Harlem of New Orleans. South Rampart Street Parade. Now we're going to move on to one of the great band leaders, piano players, and composers, and one of the greats in jazz, the great Duke Ellington. Now, Duke Ellington, when he was younger, his parents were both piano players, and his mom sent him to school, always talked about perfect manners, dressing up like you're going to church, and looking great all the time. And sure enough, all the kids started calling him Duke. So that's where we got the name of Duke Ellington. We have some great pieces that were composed by Duke, including Don't Get Around Much Anymore, and Nothing Till You Hear From Me, Sophisticated Lady, and Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing. Piece called Duke Ellington. today. Now we're going to change gears. We have a lot of talented musicians in the band and also some talented singers, believe it or not. So we're going to bring up a super talented singer, and one the crowds always love Dorian, the one and only Dorian Parriott. And Dorian will tell you a little bit about the piece that he's going to sing, along with our 4 soloists over there.
Thank you very much. I thought about this song many, many years ago, and I brought it to Paul Belmar, and he did a complete arrangement for us. And back in Juneteenth, many of the slaves, this is the things that they really held on tight to, and that was to the blessed Savior, Jesus Christ. And the title of the song is, I'm So Grateful to the Lord.
Dorian's going to be 90 years old. I guess hoping that I'm going to be above the rest when I'm 90, so not worried about singing. We have a lot of talented people in the group, so Dorian said he wanted to do this for Juneteenth, so we have some resident composers. And tonight, Paul Belmar, our first clarinet, wrote that out for the band. And I'd like to hand for our 4 soloists that we had play up here. Drew Bertzbowski on sax, Paul again on clarinet, Danny Benver on trumpet, and Jerry Wells on euphonia. So if you ever want something composed, just come see me. We'll give you a few names here that will write something, anything you want. Okay, now we're going to be treated to some poetry.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome New Jersey spoken word poetry artist, Mr. James C. Ellerbe.
Happy Juneteenth. Happy Juneteenth. I thought before I present for this wonderful occasion, for this wonderful celebration, that I would, you can hear me? Everybody can hear me? Yeah. Oh, okay. I thought that I would go back, well, not back, because we lost this person very recently, to one of our literary giants, not just in the African American community, but in poetry, in writing as a whole. The great writer, Nikki Giovanni. We lost her December 9th, this past December. So I thought it would be fitting to share her words first, and then later on I'll share my words. This poem is called Rosa Parks. This is for the Pullman's porters who organized when people said they couldn't, and carried the Pittsburgh Courier and the Chicago Defender to the Black Americans in the South so they would know they were not alone. This is for the Pullman's porters who helped Thurgood Marshall go south and come back north to fight the fight that resulted in Brown versus Board of Education, because even though Kansas is in the West, and even though Topeka is the birthplace of Gwendolyn Brooks, who wrote the powerful The Chicago Defender Sends a Man to Little Rock, it was the Pullman's porters who whispered to the traveling men, both blues men and race men, so they both would know what's going on. This is for the Pullman's porters who smiled if they were happy and laughed like they were tickled when some folks were around, and who silently rejoiced in 1954 when the Supreme Court announced its 9-0 decision that separate is inherently unequal. This is for the Pullman's porters who smiled and welcomed a 14-year-old boy onto their train in 1955. They noticed his slight limp that he tried to disguise with a doo-wop walk. They noticed his stuttered and probably understood why his mother wanted him out of Chicago during the summer when school was out. 14-year-old black boys with limps and stutters are amped to try to prove themselves in dangerous ways when mothers aren't around to look after them. So this is for the Pullman's porters who looked over that 14-year-old boy while the train rolled in reverse of the blues highway from Chicago to St. Louis to Memphis to Mississippi. This is for the men who kept him safe. And if Emmett Till had been able to stay on the train all summer, he would have been, he maybe would have grown a bit of a paunch, certainly lost his hair, probably have worn bifocals and bounced his grandchildren on his knees, telling them about his summer riding the rails. But he had to get off that train and ended up in Money, Mississippi, and was horribly, brutally, inexcusably, and unacceptably murdered. This is for the Pullman's porters when the sheriff was trying to get the body secretly buried, got Emmett's body on the northbound train, got his body home to Chicago where his mother said, "I want the world to see what they did to my boy." And this is for all the mothers who cried. And this is for all the people who said, "Never again." And this is about Rosa Parks, whose feet were not so tired. It had been, after all, an ordinary day until the bus driver gave her the opportunity to make history. This is about Mrs. Rosa Parks from Tuskegee, Alabama, who was also the field secretary of the NAACP. This is about the moment Rosa Parks shouldered her cross, put her worldly goods aside, was willing to sacrifice her life so that that young man in Money, Mississippi, who had been so well protected by the Pullman's porters, would not have died in vain. When Mrs. Parks said no, a passionate movement was begun. No longer would there be a reliance on the law. There was a higher law. When Mrs. Parks brought that light of hers to expose the evil of the system, the sun came and rested on her shoulders, bringing the heat and the light of truth. Others would follow Mrs. Parks, 4 young men in Greensboro, North Carolina, who also say no. Great voices would be raised singing the praises of God and exhorting us to forgive those who trespassed against us. But it was the Pullman's porters who safely got Emmett to his granduncle. And it was Mrs. Rosa Parks who could not stand that death. And in not being able to stand it, she sat back down. Rest in paradise. Nicky Giovanni. Thank you.
Great job, our poet. Let's have another hand. Great job. And you will be joining us again as we're going to do probably 3 more numbers and then some more poetry. Now we're going to switch to the king of pop, the great Michael Jackson. And of course, he was the originator of the famous moonwalk. And unfortunately, he passed away in 2009 at the age of 50. And after that, they were putting Neverland Estate up for on the market, and all you needed was $100 million, and you could buy Michael Jackson's estate. So we have a lot of great tunes that were composed by Michael Jackson, and we're going to feature one of our students tonight, Luke Farrell, who's a sophomore at Howell High School. And Luke actually saw a Michael Jackson show on Broadway, and that's what really inspired him, so he's really into Michael Jackson's music. So he's going to be back there on the drum set, and one of our missions with the band is to give a great education to our upcoming students, and eventually we're going to need people to replace us. So you'll see Luke is a superstar on the drum set. You'll get to hear I Want You Back, I'll Be There, Rock With You, Thriller, and Man in the Mirror. Michael Jackson, Through the Years. Let's have a hand for Luke back there. Luke, come on out front so they can see you. Come out front. Okay, now we're going to liven up things, if it's not liven up, with a little bit of Dixieland. And we have a great collection of tunes, including Copenhagen, Basin Street Blues, and When the Saints Go Marching In. I learned an interesting thing several months ago. When the Saints was actually a church hymn, then Louis Armstrong took it and made it a great hit song, When the Saints Go Marching In. And last night I went to the New Jersey Symphony, played in Red Bank, and they did the same Duke Ellington arrangement that we played tonight. And I learned that Duke Ellington and Louis Armstrong were just 2 years apart when they were born, which I never knew, and they actually collaborated on a few songs, which I never realized that. So we're going to feature our Dixieland soloists, Paul Baylog on clarinet, Dorian Perriott on tenor sax, Jay Shandon on trombone, Janet Bender on trumpet, and Rich Hensley on tuba, and our two great drummers, John Groner and Luke Farrell. And I would like to mention the reason Luke is such a good drummer, because his teacher is right next to him, John Groner back there. And you've probably all heard of the famous jazz musician Dave Brubeck. John was a student of his drummer, Joe Morello, so that's where he gets his training. Dixieland Jamboree. like to mention we do have a band table back there if you'd like to learn more about the band. Also, we have schedules that you can get and sign up and get on our email list so we can contact you all the time. And we also have a website, Instagram, and all that social media stuff. So if you check that out, you'll know what program is going to be before you come here on Monday. We always post all the program numbers that we're going to do. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit, slow things down a little bit with the great Scott Joplin. And of course, he wrote piano music, Rags, a long time ago. And all of a sudden, he came into prominence once The Sting came out, and Marvin Hamlish used The Entertainer as the hit song in the movie The Sting. And when Ragtime first came out, it was called Ragtime. People didn't like it or whatever, and then, as I said, eventually it became a real hit once it hit the movie theaters. So we have his famous tune, The Entertainer. And I know whenever I step outside and I hear The Entertainer, it means the ice cream truck is coming down the street. Scott Joplin's Entertainer. Okay, time for some more poetry.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, now for a real treat, some original poetry by Mr. James C. Ellerbe.
This first poem, I like to say, is a GPS. One of the most important questions one can ask themselves is, where are you? Not where's your location, but where are you in your existence? So here's an answer to the question. It's called You Are Here. No one chooses to be insignificant, but we can choose to be different. I choose to be like David, a man after God's own heart, minus all the running. Or like David Walker, it's time that I appeal to the kings and queens of your soul. To be a champion a Jack Johnson amongst unworthy contenders, to box out self-doubt, because you belong here. You travel down dark roads through traffic jams. You are the light bulb in Garrett Morgan's traffic light. So stop making excuses while being caught red-handed making bad decisions. Slow down when in anger, or yell low so that your voice can still be heard, and don't just see green. Go beyond the green. Go to your purpose, because you are here. Let every little black girl fly high to womanhood like Bessie Coleman, and dare the devil to try and steal your air show. Your pilot license is international, so passports to dry land make your presence felt, because you are here. And always remember, mind your business. Did y'all catch that? Let me say that again. Always remember, mind your business. Because a knowledge of business is like searching for diamonds, like miners through minefield, mining their business. Be a madam like C.J. Walker, walking on millions, because your business belongs here. There's a reason why your spirit was summoned at these times, in these times, when your freedom and your self-reliance is synonymous with your being. Not just your physical. Activate your metaphysical to be intentional about your being, because your soul belongs here. Fear not the unknown. Write the book on your life, so you too can be on a quarter like Maya Angelou and do the impossible, because your soul told you it was possible. Don't worry about not having a lot of money or not having the right circumstances. Everything you need is right here and right here. They may have stole your ancestors away, but no one can steal your soul. Be bold. You're never too young or too old to work your passion, because it, like your future, belongs not here, but right here. You are here. This final piece that I'm going to do. Anybody into the Marvel movies? Comic book lovers? DC lovers? All right, I'm Team Marvel. No disrespect to Team DC, but I am Team Marvel. But what I find about all these comic book stories is they try to tell us that we all have a superpower. We are all superheroes in our own way. So I wrote a poem about it called We Are Superheroes. We are superheroes. We are superheroes. So let no one steal your cape. Let there be no mistake, you have superpowers. You can soar above pain like the falcon. You can punch holes in fears like Luke Cage. And no matter what people may say, the bulk of your power is inside you. It wasn't manufactured in a lab. You're not a mutation. You're a physical manifestation of something glorious, something majestic. You too can control storms like storm. You were born beautiful, powerful, gifted, uplift your soul. Your neighborhoods are your Wakanda, and you are Black Panther. So save your fellow Avengers. Your name is Isaiah Bradley, the first Captain America. Like you were the first to create civilization, one of God's greatest creations on this earth. So take back your birthright, Esau. Climb, claw, fly your way out of the abyss. Assist anyone in despair. Dare to be incredible. Dare to be fearless, lest you be defeated by your own weakness. Secure your secret identity. The world doesn't need to see. Sometimes great things are done in secrecy. But most importantly, never give up. Tired of injustice, then decide enough is enough. Turn words into actions, dreams into goals. Hold yourself accountable, for the world needs you. Evil never sleeps. It wreaks havoc, disenfranchised lives, and will always live in a lie. Be the proof in truth. Be bulletproof. Be someone's lifesaver. Let no one steal your cape. Make every day an adventure. Venture to uncharted places. Pace yourself. Don't exhaust all your powers in one time. Even Jesus had to recharge. Be larger than life, like being the source of change. Put on your game face. For the race is not for the swift, but for the one that endures to the end. You too will bend spoons with your mind. Combined with like-minded forces, you got a course to your destiny. Believe you can. Believe you must. Trust in your maker. For who's going to tell her that her life is worth more than a reality TV show contract? Who's going to show him again there's no place to find a father figure? Your purpose is bigger than you. Your superpowers are not meant for you. They're meant for your family, your neighborhood, your community. For everyone wants to be super. Everyone wants to be special. But be the change. Be the difference. Be superheroes. For God's sakes, just be. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for being here on this program. Mr. James Dawson, before you leave, when you get a chance, James has a table over there. Be sure to check out his table, see his stuff available for you. Now with that, back to John Luckenbill.
Don't forget to join back there, all of the tables from the library, the great exhibit, and our band table in the center there, as we do over 20 concerts in the summer, but we especially want you to come to Belmar on Mondays at 7 o'clock. Okay, now we're going to switch to the blues. And a great hit, W.C. Handy, came up with the great St. Louis Blues March. And they took that march and they asked the West Point band, would you like to use it? They said, no, it's too jazzy. So Glenn Miller took it and became one of his greatest hits, the St. Louis Blues March. our two terrific drummers, John Gronert and Luke Farrell. Thank you for coming out tonight. We're going to end with some important pieces. Lift every voice and sing, followed by We Shall Overcome and Amen. We're going to be led by Dorian Parriott, singing these pieces for us. And being that it's kind of the national anthem, please rise if you can. Please stand up.
We're just doing one verse of Lift Every Voice.
Let's have a hand for Lewis, the library staff, and everybody who put this together, Emily Trudeau, and all the administration in Belmar. Hope to see you in the summer.
Thank you, John. So, thank you so much for coming tonight. That's our show for tonight. Before you leave, make sure you check out the Belmar Historical Society's demonstration. We have James Ellerbe and his table there, and the band table as well. And and get some more sandwiches on your way out. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Louis.